The information provided on this podcast is intended for general informational and educational purposes only. It is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. While we discuss topics related to vegan health, diet, and fitness, always consult with a qualified healthcare provider or a registered dietitian before making any changes to your diet, fitness routine, or lifestyle, especially if you have existing health conditions.
Welcome to Good Vegan Meal, the podcast for lifelong vegans, people wanting to become vegan, or those interested in vegan living. We're here to make your lives better by giving you the information you need to succeed in your compassionate vegan lifestyle.
Okay, picture this. You're at, say, a friend's potluck. It's pretty lively. Or maybe it's a more formal work dinner, or even a big family thing. The food smells amazing, everyone's chatting, and then you look at the table and you get that little feeling. You know the one. Where are the vegan options? Or, maybe worse, are these options actually vegan? That slight drop in your stomach, that quick mental calculation. How do I handle this without making a big deal, without feeling weird, or let's face it, without going hungry? Well, today, that's exactly what we're diving into, this very common challenge. We've gathered some really great insights from a pretty active Reddit thread where vegans shared their real-world tips, stuff from the trenches. And we've also looked at articles covering things like emotional maturity, how to say no gracefully, and the importance of having a community.
Yeah, our mission here really is to pull out the most useful bits of wisdom from all that for you. We want to help you walk into those social situations feeling, well, confident, calm, and maybe with a bit more compassion, too, for yourself and, for others there. So we'll look at practical strategies, ways to communicate, even sort of different philosophies behind it all aimed at helping you enjoy social events without feeling like you have to compromise your values.
Okay, let's get right to the core of it then. Why does something that seems simple, like just declining a dish, why does it often feel like such a complicated social maneuver when you're vegan? It's obviously not just about the food itself.
You really nailed it there. Our sources, they definitely highlight that food is, well, it's way more than just fuel, isn't it? It's so deeply woven into culture, family history, social bonding. It's fundamental, really. So when you politely say no to a dish, you're not just refusing like an item of food. You could be maybe inadvertently challenging the host's effort or a beloved family recipe or even someone's whole perspective on things. And there's this emotional load that vegans often carry. The sources talk about this. There's guilt, maybe about being an inconvenience, anxiety about being seen as difficult or, picky, frustration from having to explain things over and over. And sometimes, real isolation when food keeps becoming this kind of barrier. Actually, one article we looked at mentioned that 55% of vegans have felt some kind of prejudice, sometimes called vegophobia, in social settings.
That's a really powerful point, that it's not just about the food on the plate, but potentially bumping up against identity or tradition.
Yeah, it makes sense why it can feel so loaded.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, even when people do try to help out, the options provided can sometimes be, well, less than thrilling, right? That infamous plate of lettuce and tomato comes to mind.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the stories we saw range from like caterers promising vegan meals and then serving undercooked pasta shells with canned vegetables. Not great. Or the classic roasted vegetable plate that somehow has dairy in it. Or even, they make a vegan option, but then the non-vegans eat it all before you even get there. Mm-hmm. These experiences, they really just show that, well, hoping for the best isn't really a plan. You need to be proactive.
Okay, so knowing these challenges are likely, what are the actual concrete things we can do, like before an event or even during it, to kind of set ourselves up better? What's in that essential vegan toolkit? Preparation. It really is everything. And the Reddit community especially had so much practical advice on this. One really basic strategy, but super effective, is eating before you go or bringing snacks. It sounds simple, but it's not just about hunger. It's like a psychological safety net. If you know you're not depending on what's there, it just lowers the anxiety massively, makes it way easier to politely decline things without feeling, deprived or like you're drawing attention. Lots of people mention having a proper meal beforehand. Some even said stash a snack in your car for longer things like weddings. Protein bars, nuts, seeds, dried fruit, easy, portable fuel, so you're never stuck feeling ravenous.
I really like that idea of psychological safety net. It just takes the pressure right off, doesn't it? So besides having a backup plan like snacks, what if you want to be a bit more, involved?
Right. That leads perfectly into the next big tip, particularly for potlucks or more casual get-togethers.
Yeah.
Bring your own dish and bring enough to share. Someone on Reddit called this a smart and chill way to handle it. And it really is. It's kind of like culinary diplomacy. You guarantee you've got something great to eat, and you get to introduce other people to how good vegan food can be. Imagine bringing, I don't know, loaded nachos with cashew cheese or a rich chocolate avocado mousse, maybe some BBQ jackfruit sliders.
Yeah.
You eat well, and you might, as someone put it, score a big win if they like it. It completely changes the dynamic from feeling like you're restricting to feeling like you're contributing something delicious.
Yeah, that totally reframes it. It turns the potential awkwardness into a chance to share something positive. Instead of, I can't eat that, it's, hey, look what I brought for us all.
Exactly. And moving beyond potlucks, the sources really stress the importance of doing your homework and communicating beforehand. Don't just wing it. If it's a restaurant, check the menu online first. Or even better, suggest places you already know have good options. Thai, Indian, Mediterranean, they're often pretty reliable bets. For catered events or family dinners, try to ask ahead if possible. Talk to the host or the caterer. This is important even with people you know well, like close friends or family. It just gives them a heads up, a chance to accommodate if they can. Or it gives you the opening to say, hey, no worries if it's tricky, I'm happy to bring something along. It just avoids that on-the-spot awkwardness. And one last practical thing, meal customization. Don't hesitate to politely ask if things can be modified. If there isn't a specific vegan dish, maybe just spaghetti with marinara sauce. Or could you make a decent meal out of a few side dishes? Sometimes you find hidden gems, like maybe they have amazing grilled portobello mushrooms listed as a sign that you could build around. It's just about being a little creative and asking nicely.
Okay, so that covers the food logistics. But honestly, the trickiest part often isn't the plate itself, it's the chat around it, right? How do we handle those subtle social cues, the potential misunderstandings? This feels like where the real finesse comes in.
Totally. This is where our sources started talking about the art of graceful refusal. And honestly, a lot of it comes down to emotional intelligence. So for polite refusal techniques, there are a few good scripts. The straightforward, simple no thank you often works best. Things like, oh, thank you so much for offering, but I'm okay. Or maybe, I really appreciate it, but I'm actually not hungry right now. Simple, polite. Then there's what one source called the redirect and appreciate strategy. That can be really effective too. Like, wow, that looks amazing. Could you send me the recipe? Or actually, I brought this dish I'm excited to try. Have you had this before? It shifts the focus. And sometimes, depending on the situation, the health-forward approach might feel easiest. Oh, I have some dietary restrictions, or my doctor actually has me on a specific eating plan right now.
The health-forward approach. Framing it as medical, that does sound like it could smooth things over. But I wonder, does it ever feel a bit, I don't know, like you're not being fully upfront if the reason is really ethical? Or is it just a practical tool?
That's a really fair question. And the sources seem to treat it pragmatically. Look, the core reason might absolutely be ethical, but framing it as a health restriction often just stops the conversation from becoming a debate.
Yeah.
Medical needs are usually seen as non-negotiable, very personal, and ethical stance. Sometimes people feel they can argue with that. So it's really a strategy for navigating that specific social moment, maybe choosing the path of least resistance right then, rather than hiding your beliefs overall.
Gotcha. Okay. That makes sense. It's about keeping the peace in that moment. But what about those really persistent people, the food pushers, the ones who just keep saying, oh, just try a little bit. We've all been there.
Ah, yes, the classic, just a little bit won't hurt. For those situations, the advice is pretty consistent. A firm but still polite no thank you is your best friend. You might have to repeat it, gently but firmly. One specific tip was to say something like, I'm sure it's delicious, honestly, but I'm just one of those people who's pretty particular about my diet. It sets a clear boundary without being aggressive. But a really big piece of navigating all this successfully is about emotional maturity. It's so important to try and recognize that questions aren't always critiques. Like when someone asks, so where do you get your protein? Sometimes it's just genuine curiosity or confusion, not an attack on your choices. The sources emphasize that emotionally mature vegans don't get defensive. It's a mindset shift, really. It's not about you having to prove anything. It's more about trying to meet people where they are, understanding their perspective.
That's a huge point, understanding the intent behind the question. And I guess even if you handle it perfectly, not everyone is going to be understanding or respectful.
Right. You're absolutely right. And that's where this idea of respect without reciprocity comes into play, something highlighted in our readings. Not everyone will get it. Some people might make jokes or give you a little nudge, The advice there is basically respect their path anyway. It doesn't mean you agree with them or condone negativity, but You don't have to mirror back. You set your boundaries calmly. One source used this great phrase, composting negative energy, like taking that unhelpful stuff and turning it into fuel for your own resilience. It's about maintaining your own peace. And one final, really key piece of advice that came up a lot. Don't make being vegan your entire personality in social settings. Yes, it's a significant choice. It's important to you. But, as one source put it, it's not your whole story. Talk about your work, your hobbies, that movie you saw, anything else. You don't have to comment on every single non-vegan dish on the table. You don't need to launch into the environmental stats at your cousin's wedding reception. The goal is really about honoring yourself and your choices, not necessarily about winning every interaction or converting everyone on the spot.
It really sounds like a blend, doesn't it? Being secure in your own decision, but also having empathy for where others are coming from, and just being wise about which conversations are worth having when. It's fascinating how complex refusing food can become when identity is tied up in it. So we've covered the practical food side and the social interaction side, but there's another layer here, almost a philosophical split within the vegan community itself that our sources touched on. We heard a lot of advice about being, low-key, graceful, blending in, but then others argue for being more direct, more vocal. What's driving that difference?
Yeah, that's a really interesting and important tension. It gets to the heart of questions about effective advocacy versus personal comfort and conviction. So, on one side, you have what we can call the quiet example approach. A lot of sources lean this way. The thinking here is, as one person put it, people are far more interested in my diet when I don't say anything about it. There's a belief that being seen as like weird or overly preachy can actually backfire. It makes people put up walls, erect fortresses, as one source said, instead of being open. So this approach focuses on influencing people positively just by being the best and healthiest and most athletic vegan you can be. Let your actions speak. This often includes not making a fuss about limited options, maybe even being flexible about tiny accidental non-vegan ingredients, sometimes prioritizing getting along socially. It's about showing that being vegan can be pretty darn normal. One source describes someone's personal journey, how they initially wouldn't send food back if it had a tiny bit of dairy by mistake, just to avoid a scene. Though importantly, they also mentioned reconsidering that later on as their ethical stance deepened. But then, on the flip side, you have the vocal advocacy, or maybe firmness approach. These folks argue strongly that veganism is not about us. It is about the animals. It is a political statement. From this viewpoint, accepting food that isn't vegan, even by accident or staying silent, actually undermines the core ethical message. As one commenter powerfully put it, if vegans stopped caring, who would care for animals? This perspective emphasizes that being consistently firm, treating it like a serious allergy or a religious dietary law like kosher, for example, eventually earns respect and helps normalize veganism. The argument is that clear, firm stances raise awareness, show you're serious, and ultimately nothing changes if you don't speak up. There's a concern that trying too hard to make veganism comfortable for non-vegans might dilute the ethical urgency.
Wow. Okay. So it's really not about one way being right and the other wrong. It seems more like different tools for different people or maybe different situations aimed at the same bigger picture.
Exactly. It's less about right or wrong and more about different strategies rooted in potentially different priorities or even definitions of veganism. Is it primarily about your personal health? Is it about eating plant-based? Or is it fundamentally an unwavering ethical position against all animal exploitation? How you answer that likely influences which approach feels more authentic and effective for you. And context matters too, right? A work dinner might call for a different approach than a protest.
That makes sense. Context is everything. But regardless of which approach someone leans towards, one thing that came through loud and clear from all our sources was this. You don't have to figure this out alone. That having a support network is just crucial.
Oh, absolutely crucial. Yeah, one source stated it very simply. No one thrives in isolation. Finding or building your plant-powered crew, as they called it, can make an enormous difference. This isn't just about having people to swap recipes with, although that's great too. It's about finding those spaces, maybe vegan support groups, online communities, local Facebook groups, meetups you find through apps like Happy Cow where you get resources, tips, encouragement. And fundamentally, that sense of belonging, of being understood without having to explain yourself constantly.
Yeah, I can see how that would be huge. Just having a space where you don't have to be on guard or explaining, you're just understood.
Exactly. And that support network isn't just other vegans. It could be connecting with vegetarians at work, or even finding those supportive omnivores who get it. Allies are important. And for parents, there was a really neat tip about role-playing scenarios with kids, like What do you say at a birthday party when there's non-vegan cake? Teaching them confident, simple responses helps them navigate those tricky social bits while staying true to their values. It builds that confidence early.
So we've really covered a lot today, haven't we? From the nitty-gritty of meal prep and checking menus to the subtleties of conversation, graceful refusals, and even these bigger philosophical approaches to being vegan in a non-vegan world. It's definitely clear there are challenges, but also, wow, there's a lot of collective wisdom out there on how to handle them with, grace, confidence, and self-respect.
Definitely. And ultimately, navigating these social situations well seems to boil down to a mix of things. Being prepared, communicating effectively and with empathy, and really leaning on your community and, your own confident, kind way of handling things. That itself can be really inspiring to others. It helps build a more inclusive atmosphere for everyone.
Okay, so to wrap up, here's our provocative thought for you to ponder.
Yeah.
Food is so deeply tied into culture, hospitality, our sense of identity, our values. So how might our collective idea of what inclusion means evolve? How can we create social spaces where everyone, regardless of their dietary choices, feels genuinely welcome, not awkward or isolated or like they have to compromise their core beliefs? And maybe on a smaller scale, what's one tiny step you could take this week to feel a little bit more confident heading into your next social gathering?
Thanks so much for tuning in to today's episode of Good Vegan Meal. If you loved what you heard and you're hungry for more, head over to our link tree at linktr.ee/goodveganmeal. There you can grab our free PDF 30 high-protein vegan 5-minute meals packed with quick recipes and full nutritional stats for every meal. Perfect for busy days and plant-powered gains. And if you're ready to take your vegan cooking game to the next level, check out our cookbook's 125-minute vegan meals for kids' lunches, a school lunchbox lifesaver, 185-minute vegan meals, and 7 weeks of high-protein meals with meal planning made simple with grocery lists for each week. Grab your goodies at linktr.ee/goodveganmeal, and we'll see you in the next episode.